This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I might as well do a video every single day about weather, since every single day we're seeing the United States of America, we're seeing North America, I should say, because Canada is just on fire right now. We're seeing the United States of America just every day. We have a hurricane, or we have a hurricane, or we're just burning islands, or we're just burning Louisiana, or, tornadoes 70 at a time are just hitting Central, the Midwest and Central America, hitting Oklahoma, etc., hitting the South. So every day I could just cover these topics because, it's climate change. Don't be suspicious about all this stuff suddenly just happening at the same time where you can openly see your government call you terrorists, your government say that the only threat to democracy is you and me, your own government who is raising the prices of everything so you go broke, your own government who is saying that they want control over your thermostat, your same government that's telling you that you shouldn't say certain things because it hurts people's feelings, which would be our most important right that we have, which is free speech. The same government who wants to take your guns because, we could trust the government. Oh, no, right. Every single thing the government's doing is showing us that we can't trust the government. In fact, it's showing us the government's gone rogue. So we shouldn't be suspicious of things like Tropical Storm Idalia. Might as well call it idolatry because that's that's what's going on in this world. But this is about to turn into another massive hurricane that is going to be very dangerous for guess where? The honeypot known as Florida. Now, I've discussed ever since everybody's been going to Florida that it looks like a honeypot. I said it at the time, if you don't know what that means, right? Too good to be true. They were telling people in New York, hey, you can't have rights here, but you could have rights in Florida. Hey, people in California, there's no rights here, but you could have rights in Florida. And they knew that the only people who would be fleeing those states were conservatives. So they get them all down to Florida, beautiful weather. And what just conveniently keeps happening in Florida ever since that narrative has happened. Now, we know Florida's obviously had hurricanes in the past. No one's going to argue that. But the amount that have been happening over and over and over again. So you have all these people who have brought their entire lives down to Florida, all conservative. And then what could you do? Well, you could wipe them out with weather. You could just wipe them out, and wipe them out. And what are they going to do? They're not going to be collecting insurance on their homes. They're going to be homeless. And then you can round those people up to FEMA camps. Florida is a destination where, guess what? It's perceived as this great place. And I'm not saying if you live there, it's not, but I'm saying that you got to be careful and not falling into these media deceptions and traps, because everything is a deception and a trap that these people put out in the media. And what have they been putting out? They've been practically telling you that the cities like New York and California are just crime-ridden, and they've been saying, Florida is like a utopia, Florida's great. You don't have to wear masks in Florida, all these things that they've agitated us with and pissed everybody off with. Well, they're saying down in Florida, those things don't happen, so you should go down there. And then what happens? Drilled weather, over and over and over and over. And this is no different. Take a look at Tropical Storm Idalia, which is about to turn into a Category 3 hurricane and pummel the coast yet again in Florida.
Florida's Gulf Coast is on high alert this morning as Tropical Storm Idalia churns toward the state. A White House official telling CNN that FEMA is pre-deploying emergency personnel to Florida today. The storm is expected to intensify into a Category 2 hurricane before directly hitting Florida Wednesday. Hurricane and storm surge watches are in effect along the state's west coast, including Tampa Bay. CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam joins us now. Derek, the time to prepare has to be now. Is that right?
Yeah, without a doubt, because we anticipate the earliest arrival of tropical storm force winds across the southern Florida peninsula roughly about 6 a.m. on Tuesday. And as you head a little further north of Tampa Bay into the Big Bend area, we're talking about roughly 12 to 4 p.m. on Tuesday. So you don't want to be setting up your hurricane-proof shutters, for instance, in the middle of tropical storm force winds. So now is the time. It is your last full day for that opportunity to prepare your property. 65-mile-per-hour winds. It's basically splitting the difference across the Yucatan Channel, and this is important. It is now moving north at 8 miles per hour, and that's actually increased in forward speed since the 5 a.m. Eastern Standard update. Now, we do have a major hurricane in this forecast. That's important. If you're just waking up this morning, that wasn't explicitly in the forecast yesterday, but now it is.
People are filling sandbags and praying to be spared tonight in western Florida beach communities. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis left the campaign trail, heading back to his home state.
This is the Gulf Coast braces for a big storm churning in the Atlantic, strengthening thanks to historically warm ocean water. Tropical storm Idalia is currently brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. And with the record warm water temperatures, it's a recipe that could make it a very dangerous weather system. Governor Ron DeSantis declaring a state of emergency for nearly half of Florida's counties ahead of its arrival.
Anybody on this Gulf Coast, certainly from Tampa all the way up to places like Bay County, you should absolutely be very vigilant right now. You should be following the track of the storm, and you should just be making your preparations.
You got an update about a half an hour ago, some changes, and people need to start paying attention here.
Yeah, important changes now. The hurricane center, the headline, I think of this last update, now expects a major Category 3 hurricane west of Tampa Bay, 2 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. The storm is also now starting to finally move north, and as its forward speed accelerates, I think there'll be fewer changes in the track as it goes faster and faster as the momentum on this storm builds. But still, there is still some margin for error here, as it could go as far to the west as maybe the Big Bend and up towards Carabel and St. Mark's, to maybe as far east as closer to the Bay Area. Remember, the last several storms have made a turn to the right at the last minute. Charlie did it, Irma did it, Ian did it. So we need to watch this storm very carefully. And that's why watches and warnings are posted outside of the cone. Remember, the cone is just where the center may go. This is going to be a large storm, and tropical storm force conditions will extend more than 200 miles away from where the storm goes. So even if it heads through Cedar Key, let's say, up here through the Big Bend, we would still see tropical storm conditions across the Bay Area. And on this track, for the majority of us, that's what I expect. Tropical storm force conditions along the coast, with the hurricane conditions likely maybe confined only to Citrus County. The biggest threat is going to be the surge, and I cannot emphasize that enough. This is a storm that's coming in on a track and of a magnitude that we haven't seen in a long time. In fact, I checked the numbers. It's been since 1968 that a Category 2 made landfall within 200 miles of Crystal River. So if you've been up there all your life, you've probably never seen anything like this before. So you need to act in a way that you've probably maybe never acted like before for a storm. And that means getting out of the way. If you are in an evacuation zone near the water, you need to pay attention to the storm and make sure that you are making the right decisions and the right preps to keep you and your family safe. 6 to 9 feet of storm surge possible in Hernando over to Pasco County, 7 to 11 feet once you get up into Citrus, and even the Bay. Don't sleep on this storm, Tampa Bay. Even if it doesn't get close to us, we could still see significant water rises across the Bay Area.
So, once again, we're hearing things like what? What are the common themes that I've been showing you over and over in the last couple of weeks with these storms and these fires, et cetera? Things like we've never seen before, right? And they go, well, we've never seen it before because the ocean is getting warmer. Go put your feet in the Atlantic Ocean right now and tell me it's warm, okay? Warmer than normal. It's still cold. You still, struggle to get into the water, okay? You're still shivering in the water for the most part. This isn't Aruba. This isn't where you could walk in and it's like a bathtub in the Caribbean. They're like, oh, the Atlantic Ocean is so warm. All of a sudden, it's never been so warm. Are there bubbles in the ocean? I mean, can you boil eggs in the ocean? Tell me. I'm curious, because if you could boil eggs in the ocean, then I would start to say, oh, okay, something's clearly wrong. Well, they don't have the ability to boil the ocean. So what they do is they just psychologically convince you that the water's warmer when it's not, when it isn't. And then people just go, oh, okay, we're going to accept the fact that everything in America is happening right now because of the climate, not because of the rogue government, the ones who are spitting in our faces, telling us they don't care about us, even showing us that all our tax money should go to Ukraine and to a new round of magic potions, and not to the people in Maui who deliberately got fried out of their homes and killed, right? Nobody's suspicious yet. Louisiana, on fire. What do they say in Louisiana? We've never seen anything like it before. Our homes are on fire. We're evacuating our towns. We're all stuck in churches and FEMA camps, waiting for the government to come and help us. And of course, conveniently in Florida, before this even hits, who's sent down there? FEMA. FEMA's already there. They're already set up and ready as they destroy your home. Come on down. Come to FEMA. Come stay with us. Welcome to your new home. Soon to be your FEMA city, your FEMA smart city, right? Don't be suspicious of all the FEMA coffins that they've had lined up for years and years and years, or all the experiments that FEMA's done at Walmarts and other places practicing. They're practicing to round you up. And they're not rounding you up the way that they constantly perceive this in the media and the movies where or not the media, I should say, entertainment, right? Oh, the tanks are coming in and it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. They're just going to tell you that, look, the weather is like this because of the climate, and now your home doesn't exist, so we're here to help. Come on over to FEMA. And people are just going to do it. What are they going to do when their food supply, their homes, and everything else are wiped out? Their families are wiped out. Their neighbors are wiped out. They're flooded out. They got no clothes. They got nothing. And this is all done by design by our government. Now, I've covered this so many times. How many times have I shown you the stuff from Disney? If you are new, you can go through my older videos. I'm not going to replay the same clips, but I'll show you a couple clips that I found that are really funny. And I probably might have used the one before, but this is them talking about how you can control the weather, okay? If you don't want to look into it yourself and look at Vietnam and look at HAARP and all these things, here they are just talking about how they control the weather, including, which I think is hilarious, a hurricane lab, where they do, a mini experiment and create a hurricane in a lab. But of course, they would never unleash that on the people because they love us and care about us. That's why they give us free magic potions at CVS and Walgreens. Take a look at this nonsense.
This morning, the Atlantic hurricane season enters day 2. Forecasters predict fewer storms this year, but they also warn a quiet season can produce a devastating hurricane. Mark Strassman is in Miami, where researchers are creating their own storms in a state-of-the-art lab. It could end up saving lives. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. This tank gives scientists and the rest of us a view no one has ever had before. What a hurricane's power looks like at water level as it storms ashore. In just 2 minutes, scientists here can take calm waters and turn them into a monster hurricane.
The wind is gradually getting stronger and stronger as it's coming up here, and it's ramping up to a Category 5. It's probably about a Category 3 right now.
This 75-foot-long tank is the first simulator in the world capable of creating a Category 5 hurricane over water. Brian House is the director of the University of Miami's new laboratory at the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science.
What was it like when you cranked it up the first time, full blast?
It was stunning. I mean, it was chills.
Nearly 40,000 gallons of seawater fill this tank. House uses a computer program and a single 1,700 horsepower fan to whip wind speeds up to 157 miles per hour.
This tank is the largest wind wave facility in the world. We can generate an extreme Category 5.
House and his team want to understand why some hurricanes make landfall and fizzle out, while others become catastrophes.
It's the heat of the ocean that powers the hurricane. We know that gasoline drives a car, but if you didn't know how much you were pouring into the engine, you wouldn't know how fast it's going to go.
What this is going to help teach you is how the gasoline gets into the engine of the hurricane.
Exactly.
Their focus is storm surge. Rising waters historically cause 9 out of 10 hurricane-related deaths. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, storm surge killed 1,500 people. Dr. Rick Knapp, director of the National Hurricane Center in Miami, has high hopes for the new lab.
It's very rewarding as a scientist who tends to look at the atmosphere mostly via computer screens to see a real live laboratory.
For years, forecasters at the center have relied on computer models to predict a storm's course. Hurricane hunters have flown into storms and dropped probes to gauge its intensity.
Research like this in a laboratory is one of the critical pieces we need to perhaps lead to more accurate forecasts and warnings.
Gut level tell you this thing will be a lifesaver?
We are going to find some things that are going to change the way we forecast hurricanes, and because we can do it better, we can save lives.
I'm standing now on the roof of the tank. Below me, the hurricane has grown louder, more powerful, a raging Category 5. See that model of a beach house? Notice the relentless storm surge of the Category 5 as it storms ashore. Seeing that might encourage some coastal residents who typically stay put, try to ride out a storm, to evacuate the next time the big one comes along.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. CBS This Morning contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, nice to see you. Extraordinary seeing Al Gore and Bill Clinton there together with Charlie, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, they did not get into this discussion, though. But it is fascinating. I mean, lasers, really, to change the weather?
That's right. Well, as Mark Twain once famously said, everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. Well, instead of doing a rain dance, we physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer.
But this is experimental.
It's experimental. However, in the laboratory so far it works. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. It condenses around the seeds. These seeds can also be created by laser beams. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
Go ahead.
Well, this fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
Inconclusive. Even in the 60s, the CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo. We're actually using trillion-watt lasers now. And in the laboratory, sure enough, they precipitate rain out of water vapor. Sure enough, you can actually bring down electricity down the beam.
So what does it mean for drought areas that need to have rain for crops? And if they don't have them, there's the consequences of famine.
Well, the bad news is if it's a clear blue sky, it's not going to do anything at all because it only takes water vapor that's already in the air and condenses it. However, for floods, for agriculture, farmers, for people planning wedding parties, football games, you name it, outdoor events and agriculture and flooding and even hurricanes, all of them could be subject to weather modification.
Incredibly interesting, Professor Michio Kaku. Thank you so much.
So you even have these scientists admit that you can control the weather. So what is the issue then with people who are so just completely stonewalling this? They're like, that's not possible. No, they tell you, even on propaganda news like CBS 10 years ago, that's where that clip was from, they tell you you can control and manipulate the weather. So what's the problem again? Oh, it's the fact that you don't think they would do this to us. You don't? Liberals hate the government, the conservatives, and hate Trump. So why would you not think that, would they think that Donald Trump would do this to them? Yes, they would think that. So what's the problem? Take your blinders off from the left-right divide and then just realize that the Republicans and the Democrats in power are all wicked and corrupt. That, yeah, they have the capability, and yeah, they would do it. And they don't care what your affiliation is. Just look at Maui. Hawaii is a Democrat-led island base. All the people there always vote Democrat, apparently. Okay, and it's considered one of the top 10, I believe, states in America that vote Democrat all the time. Do they look like your Democrats in power gave a crap about the people who live there? Clearly they don't. So stop affiliating this stuff with political parties and realize they're all wicked. They are all principalities. These are all rulers in high places who are wicked Satanists that don't care about anyone. Now, let's play a clip here from, I like to use Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm sure everybody out there, whatever the shape of the earth you think it is or whatever, this guy is always lined up as the world's leading scientist. They love rolling this loser out. They roll him out. They roll out Bill Nye. And what is the thing I just covered with him? Oh, right. He was telling us that you could choose your gender every day. Well, here's a clip of him. It's hilarious. Talking about weather manipulation. And the guy even says it's not a question of if you can manipulate the weather, but how much control you could have over manipulating the weather. And listen to some of the things that Neil deGrasse Tyson says, especially the part at the end where he talks about how tragic it would be if people thought the things happening with the weather were actually done by experiments being done and not the warming of the ocean and the carbon dioxide problem. You know, the same problem with carbon dioxide that would cause plants and food to be created on this earth. because plants need carbon dioxide to survive. And guess what? We need plants to survive. So how does that work? No, it works right into Depop. Take a listen.
Gareth asks, I've read some theories that HARP can be used to manipulate the weather. Is this possible?
Yeah, HARP is, Mahili, what is it? High altitude
radio pension.
I always forget the acronym.
Yeah.
There are people who are sure that the government is stockpiling aliens and controlling everything about anything we would ever think about. And they clearly have never worked for the government because the level of incompetence of the government and inefficiency knows no bounds.
Yeah.
But for starters.
It's true that you could manipulate the weather like they did during the Olympics in China. Like, it's not that you can't manipulate the weather. It's that whether you would really have any serious control.
Yeah, a lot of the weather, weather happens in many places.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes about from the heat balance, from the energy coming from the sun, what it reflects off of, what it gets absorbed by, what the upcurrents do, what the downdrafts do, what the rotation of the earth is doing. All of this factors in. And so I have not been convinced by any of the reports to suggest that experiments in the upper atmosphere, physics experiments, are having any effect on our weather whatsoever.
Right.
And it would be tragic if we wanted to say, oh, that's why it's getting hotter in the world, okay? Because there's some experiment happening. That would be tragic because we would be missing the 900-pound gorilla in the room.
Right. And then, but can you...
The carbon dioxide gorilla, yes.
Yes, the 900-pound carbon dioxide gorilla. All right, here's another question.
By the way, I don't think gorillas can weigh 900 pounds.
Is that true?
Yeah, the biggest one I've seen was not 900 pounds. 500 pounds, yeah. Not 900. So 900 pound.
Like a pumpkin. I bet there's like a pumpkin that someone has made with a gorilla, like a 500 gorilla holding a 400-pound pumpkin.
That would work, yes.
That would be in the room, which would also should attract attention.
So this absolute fool, amazing to me. I mean, he plays to the Democrat audience. Obviously, if you question him, you're racist. You can't question him, of course. How could you question him? I mean, that would be horrible to question him. Because of that, and of course the fact that he thinks that you could change your genders every day, when the most basic form of science would be, I go back to kindergarten cop. I used to have a shirt before they, of course, terminated my Teespring store. Maybe I'll try to reopen it, but I had a shirt that said, boys have penises, girls have vaginas. It's the most simple science that's ever been, that there is. It's not questionable or debatable, but now it is. So our leading scientists that they roll out all the time, Neil deGrasse says that you can pick your gender every day. And on top of that, all the other lies that he spews, which I'm sure you're all aware of, this guy is literally telling you that you can manipulate the weather, but he isn't convinced that experiments are having the effect that some people like, you or me might think that they're having. And it would be tragic if we actually thought that it was, some type of experiment, run by our government and not a carbon dioxide problem. Carbon dioxide, the same thing needed for plants to create oxygen for us and for plants to survive. You notice how they're frying all these trees and forests? You know how they pretend that they care about nature because they're Wiccan/Satan? They don't care. They hate humanity. They're burning trees because they know that trees absorb carbon dioxide. And that would be the solution that people with common sense would use to combat any issue if they're claiming there's climate change when there isn't, even though they're manipulating the weather. We would say plant more trees and have them absorb the carbon dioxide. Oh, well, now there's no trees left. Now there's no trees because the fires from the warming have killed off the trees. So conveniently, while we're sucking carbon dioxide out of the air with vacuums, conveniently people aren't going to have oxygen anymore. And where's all the carbon dioxide? Oh, it's underground in their underground cities. How convenient. It's unbelievable, isn't it? So back to Florida with the weather manipulation. They are clearly targeting Florida and have been. I've talked about it. Louisiana, how convenient, right? I talked about Louisiana. We all know about Katrina. Florida, Texas, target, right? We know why they're targeting Louisiana, not just because of where it's located. How about the people who make up Louisiana? Not to mention the fact that it's going to be a smart city where New Orleans was, because it's a very popular place. It'd be the new Mardi Gras. Come on down, a smart city, right? Because people of skin color, they call, people, I don't know what you can say that's safe anymore with the algorithm, of black people. Okay, the Democrats hate them. That's the big part of the deception that's going on. They hate black people. Okay, but the perception, of course, everything's the opposite. They think that conservatives and Christians hate black. It's unbelievable, right? They're clearly targeting Louisiana and can get away with it. They're clearly targeting Florida, another location that is filled with conservatives, and they're targeting Texas, another location that's filled with conservatives. I'm pretty sure the majority of politicians from Louisiana are Republican, okay, except for the governor. But, you know, let's be realistic. I mean, you know, outside of New Orleans, the majority of people are not super liberal in the South. Most of them are, you know, more Bible Belt oriented. So you can see why they're targeting these specific places. Now, the coasts are going to continue to get hit over and over. California is going to get hit again. No one will be suspicious. You know, like the last thing that just happened where I covered it, they said the last time was 1939 they got a hurricane. So don't be suspicious when they get 10 this year. And don't be suspicious when every month one's rolling into Florida. They don't want you to see the pattern, because if you do see the pattern, they already have the boogeyman in place. The warming oceans, which nobody can feel with their own feet. Yeah, go to the ocean out in New York or New Jersey or Delaware. Ooh, it's so warm, it'll give you chills. It's so warm that when you go in, you'll be shaking, trying to get your body used to the temperature. But it's so warm that it's causing all of these events to occur. Everything's catching fire. Hurricanes are forming, targeting the same states over and over and over again. We'll see what comes of this. I'm sure it's not going to be good. I mean, sometimes, you know, when they do these things, they don't pan out the way that they hope. And I should say they aren't as destructive as they hope. So let's pray that that doesn't happen to the people down there who have been hit enough with these things. And everybody else out there who's affected by the fires in Louisiana, people in Maui who've been affected. Because we're going to be next, no matter where you are. There's nowhere safe, really. They have a blueprint in place. Remember, this is their game. This is psychological, and this is obviously an attack using weaponized, you know, weather manipulation and direct energy weapons, etc. Silent weapons of war, really, biological, all these things, right? They are the ones who created this. So they obviously are all about psychological warfare. They know how we're thinking. They're listening to videos like this and people like us. They're 10 steps ahead because they're the ones with the blueprint. We're trying to figure out how to navigate around their bullcrap because we live in a society of sleeping zombies who refuse to see the government and what they're doing to all of us. Not just hurting people, ruining lives, killing people. It's really just unbelievable. So pray for the people in Florida. More weather manipulation. I'm sure tomorrow, or, you know, tomorrow I'll probably be covering more of Florida. Maybe not. It's depending on what happens. But I'm sure 2 days from now, there'll be another hurricane. Texas. What's that one going to be? Hurricane Biden? I mean, what are they going to call it? Hurricane Norma, maybe, right? Wink, wink. I don't know, but it's frightening. Pray for the people who are in the path of these weapons created by our own government. I thank you all for being here. I said y'all. I thank you all for being here. I hope you're all doing well. A reminder, please subscribe to my other 2 channels if you haven't yet. They're linked below. Also, linked below is my website, uprisingrevival.com. I hope to see more people over there. And my Patreon for anyone that wants to support this channel and the work that's going out. I appreciate everybody. God bless all of you as always, and your families.